So, no, it's not a meetup about circus. It is a meetup about growth hacking, and I promise to explain you everything by the end of the evening. But first, I would like to ask you a question, guys. How many of you could do better with an extra 50,000 euros to your marketing budget? And all the rest? OK. So I'm not an investor, and obviously I can't help you with that. But I would like to try showing you a different reality, a reality where a reality where the money doesn't really matter, a reality where the most powerful force is your ability of thinking differently. Sorry? Yes. So, our plan for tonight. First, I will tell you a bit about myself. Then I will present for the first time in public the user mind method, which is a growth hacking method that I believe that many of you could use yourself in your own business. We will do it through looking into a first case study, which the method is based on. Then we will go through the steps of the method itself, step by step. And then we'll try to implement it all together on the second case study. The second part of the talk would be about 6 laws from a playbook of a growth hacker. So first, a bit about my own successes. So starting from 500 users and only $50 marketing budget, we acquired 3,000 signups within 6 days. With no money at all, and have never used Twitter beforehand, we built an audience of 60,000 followers, very targeted followers, on Twitter on a range of few different accounts within 4 months. First-time author, publishing her first book. With no marketing budget at all, we brought it to the first place on its category on Amazon on the second day after its launch. And this meetup today, I don't really know that many people in town, and I don't really know most of the faces over here. But somehow we had we ran out of free seats more than a week before this talk, and I will tell you a bit about that later on. So a bit about myself. My name is Ribin. I'm from Tel Aviv. I'm here in Berlin for the last year. I'm a passionate entrepreneur and a growth hacker. I served in the Israeli army, in the intelligence forces. I started coding when I was 15. I started my first business when I was 19. And nowadays, I'm mostly helping startups achieving their full potential through growth hacking. So let's get to business. Our first story starts in the year of 1998. Dinosaurs were still walking upon Earth. Those 6 young guys met during the university days and started the first company called Fieldling. Back in the days, they didn't have much money in their pockets and only some theoretical business knowledge. I think it got stuck. Thank you. Nowadays, they're all flying private jets and driving Teslas. Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you know? Can you recognize any of them? Thank you. Those are the founders of PayPal from the very, very early days of it. So how did they achieve their crazy success with very limited resources? They decided to think differently. They found a user mind. User mind is a place where you know that your users are hanging out at, you can extract them from, and bring them to your own platform, system, or business. They decided to use eBay as their user mind. So what they actually did was to go to eBay to create plenty accounts on eBay. Using those accounts, they were looking for cheap products that they could place biddings on, And then once they won the contest, they will write a message to the person selling that product, asking him, telling him that they really want to pay for it, but only if they can do it through PayPal. And then, of course, they automated this process. Oh, no, it's good. Thanks. So using this method, among a few others, of course, they managed to achieve crazy growth rate. So crazy that within 2 years after the establishment in the year 2000, they reached their 5 million users milestone. So crazy that only 2 years later, they were acquired by eBay for $1.5 billion. Now, PayPal are not the only one that tried such a method. Even though it might seem creative and it might seem out of the box, they're not the only one. And here are the logos of some of the other companies who also known for doing that or another kind of growth hacking, at least at the beginning of their journeys. So I studied some of their success stories and created a few methods that I believe that many of us could implement in our own business to create similar success. And the one that I want to talk about today is the user mind method. So here's the full method, but we will take it step by step. The first 2 steps are to identify your unique selling proposition and to identify your target audience. So of course, those are 2 very basic marketing tasks. But at the end of the day, growth hacking, it might be marketing on steroids, but it's still marketing. And you have to do the basics right. So you have to know your unique selling proposition and your target audience. The next step, you go and you map all the places where your potential customers or users are hanging out. And you're looking really for anything. It might be a social network. It might be a website. It might be an app. It even might be some offline places. I don't know how many of you know, guys, but Tinder started, the dating app, Tinder, started with making offline parties to attract their first users, which is weird, but that's what they did. So it might be anything. Step number 4. For each of the places that you found, you define your advantage. So that's where you're looking at your unique selling proposition, and you're trying to define and understand what you're doing better than each one of them, or which added value you can provide to a user which is using one of those platforms. Step number 5, that's where the fun begins. You go and you create a few accounts on each one of those platforms, and then you start playing with them. You try to press on any possible button. You try to find and map all the possible ways to communicate between those users that you just created. And then you take all the information that you have so far together, the unique selling proposition, what makes you better, and your possibilities. You put it into one big chart, and you're trying to take the decision of what's the best place to use as your user mind. And then, of course, you automate. Now, that's the only step where you might need a developer. But if you follow the plan so far, and if you know to describe in details what you need, you don't need to find a top growth hacker to do it for you. You can just find a developer that can follow your very detailed instructions and just automate the process that you already know how to do yourself. And then, of course, you run it, you measure the results, you optimize, and you repeat. So, just a sec. It's quite funny, isn't it? So, now when you're familiar with the steps of the method, I would like to try to implement it together on our second story. And our second story starts in the year of 2008. Those are 2 guys who decided to earn some extra money by hosting tourists on air mattresses and serving them with homemade breakfast. Of course, I'm talking about Airbnb. So, I'd like to invite you, join me in this garage together, and try to hack Airbnb's success story. So we'll just go through all the steps of the method and try to solve them together one by one. So step number one, identify your unique selling proposition. What makes Airbnb different from their competitors or from other hospitality websites?
Was a question.
It was a question. I'm sorry if not clear enough.
I'm waiting for the answer.
Yeah.
Local people hosting.
Right, so they have the private flats, right? That's the, yeah.
You don't need to invest in real estate.
That's correct. What else?
It's crowdsourced.
Right?
They do the taxes and the invoices for the landlords.
Correct. Or don't do the taxes in some countries. That's true.
Yeah,
Well, they basically do the marketing and find the clients for the homes.
Mm-hmm.
I think they also have pretty pictures.
That's actually very correct.
yeah, probably.
What if we will try to compare them to some hotel booking websites, for example?
Easy to use.
Yes? Cheaper, right?
More personal.
Of course. Okay, cool. So we have some good ideas here. I just wrote down a few of them. So they allow you to house people in private flats instead of in a facilitated hotel. They do take care of the facilitation of the process. So it's not like you're just doing it with somebody else one-on-one, but they actually take charge of the fact that you'll come there and find the keys. They have the social proof, and they have the visual beauty of the listings, because it does look very, very well. Question number two. Who is their target audience?
Freelancers,
Yes.
nomads, people who are sick of hotels.
Who are what, sorry?
Who are sick of hotels.
Who are sick of hotels, yes.
People like in the, I wouldn't say like middle class, but more, or it used to be, right? In the lower segment in the beginning. Lower
So
budget.
basically lower budget,
The
yeah.
majority, right? It's
Yeah.
not upscale, or it didn't used to be.
Yeah,
But not couchsurfing, yeah. I think that's the difference. And they provide security for the landlord.
exactly.
And, yeah, for the money you have to pay, you have to get something.
Yeah. Yeah, so I summed up, again, some of what you said here. Travelers, people who love the alternative lifestyle, people who probably wouldn't mind to stay in a private flat versus a hotel. People who are on low budget. Of course, that's not how you should be defining your target audience in real life. I'm just simplifying it for the sake of this presentation. It should be way more profound. Now let's try to think together where those people might be hanging out,
Couchsurfing websites.
right?
Hostels.
Sorry?
And hostels, I suppose. Hostels? What-
Hostels, yeah, correct.
Universities?
Right.
Travel blogs.
Travel blogs, yeah.
Maybe alternative like meetups. I don't know if meetup exists when.
Yeah, I think it did, yeah.
Let me exchange things. Like, you know, stuff.
Yeah. What about online places? Let's talk a bit about where online we maybe could find those people who love to travel. And, sorry?
Social media.
Facebook groups, social media. Where else?
YouTubers.
YouTubers, TripAdvisor,
Craigslist.
Craigslist,
Instagram.
Instagram, yeah. Okay, so I mapped out some of those places. I managed to guess around 50% of what you said, I think. TripAdvisor, Booking.com, just because people who travel would like to book a hotel somewhere. Kayak, Yelp, Facebook, Craigslist, and the International Student Forum, which is just a forum for students, because they're also part of our target audience. Now the next step is to define what is our advantage as Airbnb versus each one of those websites. And I'm sorry for going only for online places, because it's going to be a bit tougher to do this conversation with offline hostels and stuff like that. Yeah, so let's take TripAdvisor, for example. What Airbnb does that that TripAdvisor doesn't.
In TripAdvisor, you don't get places, you cannot book it.
I think actually you can book, but you can book only hotels, which is right. You cannot book private flats. Yeah, yeah. And actually, the same is right about Booking and Kayak and Yelp. But what about Facebook? What makes us different from Facebook in that sense?
The search actually works.
Right? The search actually works.
You control the search rather than the owner of the website.
Exactly. And there is a better targeting eventually, right? Because eventually you know that people are coming here to find those flats and not just to browse online. And you have the facilitation of the process again, because you know that it's not that you just send a message to somebody who promised you to be there, but actually Airbnb take the responsibility of the flat being there when you arrive. Or not the flat being there, but the person being there. Yeah. What about Craigslist? That's true.
Social proof.
Sorry?
Social proof.
Again?
Social proof.
Social proof, yes. Because they have the reviews, right?
Integrated payments.
Exactly, because you cannot repay on Craigslist.
Security for the host.
Right?
The deposit of Airbnb.
Yeah. And I'm not going to ask you about the International Student Forum because it's quite small. I mean, if you're not students, probably you don't know it yourself. And it is an international forum, but it is quite small in the States. And that's why such places we're just going to rule out even without looking at them, because eventually growth hacking is a numbers game. And we do need to have a big amount of people within our target audience in the platforms that we're trying to play with. Good. So those are some of the answers, but we'll just continue to the next step. Step number 5. Create accounts on each one of the platforms. So on the platforms. Sorry. So please take out your laptops and go. No, I'm joking. I don't. I mapped out most of the things that you could do as a user on those systems. It's nothing special. Just like all the possibilities that you could discover yourself after pressing on all the buttons. Probably also missed some of them. So on TripAdvisor, you can review a hotel, review a location, upvote reviews, upload a photo of a location, write in a forum, or send a direct message. On Kayak, you can't really do anything because there's just a curation engine, so they don't have their own listings. Craigslist, you can list items and you can send messages to other people. On Booking.com and on Yelp, you can book a hotel, write a review, or list your own hotel if you have one. And on Facebook, you can do plenty of things. You can like, you can share, you can send a direct message, you can comment, do all those things in groups, poke, tag, and etc. And now we're coming to the most interesting part. That's where we should look in all the information that we gathered so far and take a decision about what is the best place to use as a user mind for ourselves. And I would like you to take a minute and look at that. And then I would like to hear some opinions of you guys. What would you choose being Airbnb? And there is no right or wrong, because I would assume that it will be possible with most of them, just a question of what's going to be more efficient at the end of the day. Sorry?
New TripAdvisor because you can book a private flight with them, and that's exactly what people would want. And you can do a lot of stuff. You can upload photos, you can interact with users. There's a lot of actions
Yeah.
I think it has the best visibility, TripAdvisor. I would probably create 100 accounts and upload my comment that is
Mhm.
on top, and then everyone sees it, or popular, whatever, or something popular.
Yeah, that sounds good.
On Craigslist, you just advertise what you've got for rent, and there's a lot of people that are looking for short-term accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just advertise there. That's easy enough.
And which is,
It used to be that you could automate it. Somebody did this, but then they did away with the function. But somebody used Craigslist to up their business the way that you described, which is probably what it was.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I would use Facebook. I think it's easier to create groups there and
Yeah.
manage the groups. And as well, you can kind of manipulate opinions if you have like several users there. I think Facebook would be the best thing.
Okay, so to use Facebook to create groups.
Yes, the groups exactly.
Okay.
So in Facebook, it would make sense to have groups that are localized, for San Francisco, for New York, for Berlin. And then people talk about their Berlin experience and about their San Francisco experience and where to stay. And how good it was.
Yeah. So you're actually saying that Facebook is better than Craigslist in that sense?
No, I don't really think that any one of them is better than the other because you've got different audiences for all of these different websites. So if you really want to spread it out and meet as many audiences as possible, you should try to find as many of these as possible, but focus on one, and then when you've optimized that, move on to another. Where can you do that work and put it on another platform?
Yeah. So you're saying to start with one of them and then to move to the other one, but which one would you start with?
I would probably start with something more localized, because I would start where my company is and where my investors are, so that we can get a proof of concept that my investors can relate to.
Yeah. Okay.
And
That-
also there I know the audience. And TripAdvisor, if this was a new thing and I didn't really know that much about the travel business, I would have to learn an awful lot to be effective on TripAdvisor, but I know my area, so I would probably focus on the area. So we'll probably start with Facebook and Yelp and Craigslist, because that's local.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else? Any more ideas, opinions?
comments for the comparable properties on booking.com would be the most targeted, but then you would have really better relationships with booking.com and your comments would be deleted person.
Yeah, you might at the end of the day have better relationship with any of them, and I will tell you in a second why. But you're saying that booking.com basically is the best one because...
They're searching exactly for hotels,
Yeah.
because there are comparable properties,
Mm-hmm.
some reviews mentioning Airbnb,
Yeah.
and yeah, why not?
Yeah, cool. So that's also an option. So I'll tell you what Airbnb did eventually. Airbnb decided to choose Craigslist. And I believe that the reason is because on one hand they have the same target audience. They are sharing pretty similar target audience of people who look for alternatives, of people who don't want to go for the conventional hotel, but they would like to try something different. And on the other hand, they provide the same people with pretty big advantages, with pretty big added value, which is the ability to facilitate the process. So you can actually know that you will come there and it's going to be there, and you have the reviews, as you said before. Yeah, so they choose Airbnb. So Airbnb chose eventually Craigslist. And what they did was to look for new listings of new places, of new apartments on Craigslist, and to send a message to the owner of each one of them. And the message would look just like that. And actually, that's the original message that they were sending. So notice that, of course, it's not from Airbnb. It's from Sarah. And it's completely not commercial and unbiased message. Where Sarah stumbled upon mistakenly at my amazing apartment, and she invites me to come and try this new website called Airbnb. And she even kind enough to put a link to the website in her message. So that's what they did. And then, of course, instead of doing it manually, they automated it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Two questions. Was it the only way they did it on Craigslist, or did they also write people who actually were looking for a place?
They actually did a few different things on Craigslist. I will tell you about the other ones later. But I think that's the most interesting one, because that's the less spoken one. That's the most tough one to hack around.
Was this compliant with the
Terms of use?
terms of use of Craigslist?
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if they cared either. And then you automate. So that's, yeah. So, and then the question is, how would you ask a developer to do such a thing for you? And there's two answers. The short one is as detailed as possible. And here you can see the long one. And I wouldn't want to go through it right now because it's going to be too long for us. But just shoot me an email or ask my partner, AC. She's sitting over there. Just leave your email to her, and we will send you the slides later on. And then, once you have that, you run it, you measure, you optimize, and you repeat. So Airbnb never revealed this story officially. But there is evidence out there that they were doing it for at least 2 years in a row. And that would explain their crazy growth rate, and that would explain how did they became one of the fastest growing companies in history. So this is how the big guys are doing it. And of course, you can sit there and wait for an investor to come and discover your great potential, or you can just go out there and create your own success. And that's basically my message here, and that's what we finish. And that's what we finish with talking about the user mind method. Now, the second part of it is going to be a bit more funny, hopefully. It's going to be 6 laws from the playbook of a growth hacker. So law number 1, never stop exploring. Truth be told, growth hacking, there's not as much creativity in it as it might seem. After all, it's a new buzzword, but its roots are as old as marketing itself. And the best story to show you what I mean is actually a story of a jeans company from the end of the 19th century. So that's a jeans company that started offering their first jeans to retail stores. And soon they realized that there is no single manager of a retail store that would like to buy new jeans and put it on the shelf in his store unless he is sure that the end consumer actually will be willing to buy it. And of course, if it's a new brand and nobody ever heard about it, there is no such chance. So what did they actually do? They had to be creative. Actually, it's not creative, but they had to think differently. And what they did was to start paying customers to walk into the store and to ask to buy that new brand, which of course the store didn't have at the moment. And you can imagine yourself that when after a few weeks of doing that again, a salesman of the company would walk into the door of the store, the manager would love to see him there, and he would love to buy his jeans and to put them on the top shelf, on the best shelf. Because it seems like everybody around want to buy those jeans, right? So my point here is that you must explore all the time new technology and new possibilities. But you should never forget to also look back in the time into human psychology, into history of marketing, because after all, marketing is as old as the human history itself. Law number 2, have a grain of chutzpah. Now, chutzpah is a Hebrew word, which doesn't really have a translation to English, but the best translation is audacity. Basically, it's a characteristic of a person that when you have it, you care less about what people around you think about you, which means that you are more likely to act out of the norm and out of the box. Alice Cooper. What does Alice Cooper have to do with growth hacking? So apparently, rock musicians in the beginning of their career have the same problem as startups. They don't have enough resources. And at the beginning of his career, after some success in the States, his manager decided to go to the UK to make some money. So first thing they did, they looked for one of the biggest places in London. They booked Wembley Arena, 10,000 seats, huge place, and they sold 50 tickets. That's it. So what do? Well, they had to think differently. And they realized that the target audience is teenagers. Now, how do you make a teenager love something? You make his parents hate it, right? So they took the most provocative picture of Alice Cooper that they could, actually just this one, when he's lying naked only with a snake covering his genitals, and they put it in a huge truck. Now, there's a driver to drive it to Piccadilly Circus, which is one of the biggest junctions in London, and to break down in the middle of a rush hour in the middle of the junction. So that's how it looked on the next morning, right? That horror rocker from the States who did that horrible thing, which obviously made all the adults and the parents hate him, which is exactly what they looked for, because all the tickets were sold out on the next day. And what do we learn from it? We learn from it that eventually there are 7 billion people out there, and we don't have to make every single one of them to love us. It's just enough if most of them will love us, and it's just enough if the ones that believe in what we believe will love us, and it's just fine to say that some people might like us a bit less for what we do, as long as we're aware of the consequences, of course. Law number 3, create scarcity. Now, scarcity is the force that moves people from passive to active. From, oh, that looks nice, to, I really need to do something about it right now. And that's eventually what makes the difference between somebody looking at your product or buying your product. Looking at the page of your meetup or actually coming to your talk. Or actually pressing yes, at least, on the page, right? Now, how many of you remember that when you sign up for this talk, there were only few spots left? Like, let's say less than 10 spots left. That actually doesn't make much sense, because what I did, I started the first limit of the spots for the talk on 35. I was increasing it little by little to make sure that whenever somebody comes to the page, it always looks like it's almost fully booked. So you cannot wait, you cannot postpone for later. You have to go and press on the yes button right now, because otherwise you might, of course, forget and never come back to it, right? So scarcity works with everything. Yeah, of course, that was my first confession. Wait for the second one. They're going to come soon. Law number 4, use what you have got. and that's where we're coming back to the cartwheel that I started this talk with. So why did I start the talk with a cartwheel? Well, honestly, just because I can. Now, I was looking for something different. I was looking for something to make the talk more surprising and more memorable. And of course, a cartwheel doesn't have to do anything with growth hacking. But it's something that I know how to do. It's a skill that I have. Why not to use it in some other area of my life or in my business or in my talk, right? What I'm trying to say here is that we all have those resources, those skills that we can or could use, those great skills that we have, and that we usually don't think that we could use them in our business or in our marketing, and we should always keep them in mind and see how we can use them for what we do. And when you ask yourself what kind of skills or what kind of resources, it can be really anything. It can be that you have many friends on Facebook. It can be that you have a great singing voice. And it can be that you have a cat with blue eyes and a funny tail. And you're just using him to sell your products. That's actually what that guy does. True story. Want to watch it a bit more? Can I go to the next slide? Okay, and here we are coming to my second confession, which I hope not gonna make you hate me, guys. How many of you remember being invited here by somebody on Twitter? That's it? Come on. So, I'm sorry to tell you that I never invited you guys. It was not me and not my partner. It was an automated script that was looking for Berlin-based people who are into startups, marketing, and entrepreneurship that probably would be interested in such a talk, and invited you guys completely automatically here. That was a script that I wrote for a completely different purpose a while ago, but wanted to use it if I already have it, right? So always remember to use what you have. Yeah. Law number 5, don't spam. Now I know that oftentimes the line between spamming and growth hacking might seem very thin, but there is a world of a difference between them. This is how Google would define spam. Send the same message indiscriminately to a large number of people. Now, we would always strive to send our message only to the relevant people, only to the people that we know that will make some use, or probably better use, with our product or with our service. We will never send our message just blindly to the whole world out there. In fact, if you try to compare what are being bidded with any public commercial on the TV, and I just took BMW as an example, because it's German, I think so. And if you will try to look and to compare those two examples, you will see that, in fact, what Airbnb did was so much more targeted than any commercial that you can watch on the TV. And my point is just always try to be like Airbnb in that sense. Always try to narrow down your target audience. Always try to reach only to the people that are actually will be interested in what you want to provide them with, and always provide them with real value. And last one, law number 6, stay hungry, stay foolish. Sorry, that's the right guy. So, of course, it's not my own words. That's the words of Steve Jobs, but that's the best way to describe the mindset of a growth hacker, because growth hacking is not a profession. It's a state of mind. Growth hacking is being passionate about, I just forgot everything. Sorry?
He's like hypnotizing.
Right. So cool guy. Yeah, because eventually growth hacking is being passionate with exploring, because eventually growth hacking is being passionate with psychology, being passionate with optimizations, being passionate with finding those new opportunities all over around you. So if I have to give you only one advice about how to grow your business better, I would just say, stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you very much. Questions?